welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are really digging into a feeling that's creeping up on a lot of people. It's this sense of modern professional anxiety,
Hmm.
because that big existential crisis that we used to associate with your 40s, it seems to have packed its bags and shown up a decade, maybe even more, earlier.
It's a huge shift,
Yeah.
and it's happening to professionals who, by any traditional measure, are doing incredibly well.
Yeah, and I want to start with an observation that really kicked this whole deep dive off for us. It was from Pine Labs CEO Amrish Rao.
Oh, right.
He noted that for these high-achieving, well-paid workers, the 30s is the new 40s when it comes to the mid-career crisis.
Which means these young, successful professionals are hitting an existential wall right when their careers should be, soaring.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to try and give you a kind of a roadmap for navigating this. We're blending psychology, a bit of philosophy, and some really practical strategic planning.
To help you figure out what's really going on.
Right. To help you diagnose the root causes, tell the difference between a real crisis and just burnout, and then plot out some actual steps for making a change that sticks.
And to do that, we've got a pretty dense stack of sources, everything from those CEO insights and career coaching advice to some pretty profound philosophical toolkits for dealing with regret.
And even some clinical research on coaching models that actually work.
Okay, so let's look closer at this whole accelerated timeline. It feels so counterintuitive.
It really does.
I mean, why are these successful, well-paid people in middle management questioning everything in their late 20s or early 30s? Shouldn't success just lead to stability, happiness?
Logically, yes.
Yeah.
But the central finding here is that the early success actually becomes the catalyst.
How so?
Rao's analysis suggests that young professionals feel settled really, really quickly, sometimes by their late 20s. And that stability, paradoxically, it breeds restlessness. It breeds boredom, not contentment.
So they got to the top of the first mountain way faster than they expected, and now their whole frame of reference has shifted.
Precisely.
They have the financial security, they have the title that maybe their parents worked another 10 years for, and now they're looking around thinking, well, nothing seems impossible.
That security gives them the luxury, really, to demand more meaning. And we see this playing out in the actual data.
Shorter job tenures, right?
Shorter job tenures, earlier career breaks. They are actively stepping away from roles that feel comfortable, but, creatively dead.
And this early crisis is so fascinating because it's such a sharp contrast with the traditional mid-career dip that we studied for years. We know from all this global research that statistically, middle age is still the hardest time of life.
That data is rock solid. Across different cultures, you see that famous U-shape in self-reported life satisfaction.
It starts high, dips in the middle.
And bottoms out right in the mid-40s before it starts to climb again. There was a big 1996 survey of British employees that found job satisfaction specifically hit its lowest point at around age 39.
Which makes sense. That's the traditional high-stress zone. You've got maximum professional responsibility crashing into peak family and financial pressure.
And philosophically, that classic dip is driven by things like, well, the narrowing of your options, the realization that regret is just inevitable.
And that feeling of the tyranny of projects successively completed and replaced.
That hollow, is that all there is feeling?
There you go.
Exactly. But what's new is that people are getting that hollow feeling a full decade earlier, before the financial pressure is quite so crushing. Okay, so before anyone listening starts, drafting their resignation letter, we need to offer a really critical diagnostic tool.
Right.
Because burnout and a true existential career crisis, they can feel very, very similar. But they need totally different solutions.
The symptoms on the outside look the same, right?
Sure.
Dissatisfaction, feeling tired, a bit detached. So what is the key difference we need to flag for people?
The difference is really in the energy behind the feeling. So burnout is about energy depletion. It comes from prolonged stress work, caregiving, just sheer overload. If you're burned out, you are physically and emotionally drained. You've lost your motivation. And here's the critical part. You feel too exhausted to even think about making a big change.
So you know you're miserable, but the idea of just updating your LinkedIn profile feels like climbing a mountain.
Precisely. A midlife career crisis, on the other hand, is a period of deep questioning.
Yeah.
Am I living the life I want? But that crisis, it generates a drive for reinvention. It pushes you to act.
It creates energy instead of draining it.
Exactly. It's what makes you enroll in a course or start researching a totally new career.
So that's the simplest way to tell them apart. Action versus depletion. But you said they can overlap.
They absolutely do. Often, realizing you're burned out is what sparks the crisis. You start asking, why am I spending all this energy on something that doesn't matter to me?
Yeah.
The real danger zone is when you're stuck in the middle, stuck in life but too exhausted to change.
Okay, so this is the key takeaway for anyone feeling this way right now. Address the burnout first.
Always.
You cannot possibly tackle these huge existential questions about your life's purpose when you're running on empty. You have to prioritize rest and recovery before you even attempt that deep strategic work.
So once your energy levels are a bit more stable, you then have to face these internal battles, the ones that every successful person hits eventually. Futility and regret.
Let's start with regret, because that one feels the most paralyzing. We tend to think regret means we took the objectively wrong path.
And that kind of thinking is just crippling. It's often false. Our sources really emphasize that regret is inevitable, not because you chose badly, but because worthwhile things are valuable in different ways.
Okay, unpack that a little.
So you feel a sense of loss for choosing finance over fashion because you genuinely valued the creativity in fashion. That feeling of loss just proves that you find worth in many walks of life. It's a sign of a rich inner world, not a failed life.
Wow, that's a huge reframe. So my regret doesn't mean my current path is a mistake. It just means it was one of several potentially good paths.
Exactly. But what if the regret is about actual, mistakes, failures?
Yeah.
The philosophical counterweight to that is what our sources call attachment. Instead of dwelling on this abstract life you didn't live, you focus on the concrete, positive things your current life is giving you.
Like what?
The attachments to people, the friendships, the specific achievements that would not exist otherwise. You can compare the vivid, real texture of your actual life, like the friends you made in law school or the spouse you met at that job, against the vague cartoon version of the life you didn't lead.
So you have a reason to be glad you lived this life, flaws and all.
Right. It has an emotional gravity. But that brings us to the other problem. Present day ennui. That hollow feeling when you just keep ticking off accomplishments but feel empty. The tyranny of projects. That emptiness often comes from focusing only on what's called ameliorative value. That's the value you get from fixing problems, hitting targets, putting out fires. It's necessary, but it provides really limited satisfaction because it's always just about fixing a deficit.
So to feel sustained, we need something else.
We need existential value, the kind of stuff that makes life feel worth living, period. This is where the distinction between telic and atelic activities becomes a really powerful tool.
Okay, break those down.
Sure. Telic activities are goal-oriented. They aim at a finish line. Closing a deal, submitting a report. Once the goal is hit, the activity is, by definition, over. It annihilates itself. The satisfaction is gone.
And atelic activities are the opposite. They're process-based.
Exactly. They are fully realized in the present moment and don't have a built-in end. Things like mentoring a colleague or having a really engaged conversation or parenting. You don't finish being a good mentor. The value is in the ongoing process.
The actionable tip here then is to shift your focus.
Yes. When you're working on a telic goal, like that big report, try to actively concentrate on the atelic parts of it. The interesting collaboration with your team, the mastery of a new skill, the craft of the writing itself.
Value the engagement, not just the completion.
You got it. That way, the value is realized right now, in the moment, not deferred until some future goal is hit.
So that philosophical clarity is great for the internal landscape, but if you actually want to shift tracks, you need to get extremely pragmatic.
Yes.
You really cannot just improvise a career change. So let's move from the philosophy to the roadmap, and that has to start with the foundation.
Money. Financial planning is the absolute structural integrity of any career change. Without it, you are almost guaranteed to panic and run back to your old job.
So step one is a detailed understanding of your spending.
A really detailed one. So you can identify what you can cut back on without making yourself miserable. Then you build that safety net.
The savings buffer. And a common pitfall is underestimating how long you'll need it for. It's not 6 months.
No. It's often 12 to 24 months. And before you quit, you have to maximize your current financial security, while you still have a solid job history.
Like refinancing loans. Much easier when you're employed.
Exactly. And assess your investments. Maybe shift to something less volatile for a bit. And, crucially, talk to your partner. This has to be an open, ongoing conversation about reduced earnings and shared goals.
It's a family project, not just a solo mission.
Totally. Then, once the money is sorted, you face the psychological traps. We found 6 common mistakes that come from ego, impatience, and just A failure to adapt.
Let's run through them because they're so relatable. Number one is rushing in without a clear strategy.
The emotional resignation. You leave a job out of pure frustration without testing the new reality or having the financial plan. It's a recipe for high-stress failure.
Number two, ignoring your true motivations. This seems so obvious, but
It happens all the time. People switch jobs to get away from a bad boss or for a tiny raise, but they haven't figured out their core values. They just land in the same situation with a different logo on the door.
okay. Mistake three, underestimating the learning curve. This one is a huge ego check.
It's the fatal flaw of being competent. You're used to being the expert. But changing sectors means you're a beginner again. It requires humility, real training, and finding a mentor.
Mistake four, neglecting your network and image. The old paper CV just isn't enough anymore.
It's almost secondary. If you're just firing off CVs and not active on LinkedIn, you're missing maybe 80% of the opportunities, which come from networking. Your network is your lifeline.
And the last two seem to be about the internal struggle. Mistake five is wanting to do it all alone.
Which just leads to exhaustion. If you're starting a business, you can't be production, sales, and admin all at once. Successful changers get advice and learn to delegate fast.
And the last one, not adapting your professional discourse. How do you reintroduce yourself without the old jargon?
It's a massive hurdle. We saw an example of a finance director wanting to move into HR, but in every conversation, all they talked about was figures and risk analysis.
Yeah, people.
Right. They failed to show they could speak the new language. They had to learn to talk about communication and change management, not just spreadsheets. Okay, so let's get into the execution. When you make that leap, your biggest asset is not your old job title. It's the underlying skills you've built over the years.
And mid-level professionals have a huge advantage here, even if they're feeling burnt out. But how do you actually identify which skills are transferable?
It takes a bit of work. Start with a rigorous self-assessment. What tasks gave you energy? What skills made you successful? Then get some outside validation from colleagues or mentors.
And then skill mapping.
Yes, skill mapping. You literally take your list of skills and hold it up against job descriptions in your target field to see where the overlaps are.
You can see those bridges everywhere. Sales skills translate directly to marketing through communication. Operations experience is perfect for finance because of process optimization.
Exactly. Or someone from customer service moving to product management. Their deep experience with customer empathy and solving pain points. That's gold.
So when you're marketing this change, a standard CV isn't the right tool. You need a skills-based resume.
And a cover letter that tells a compelling story. It has to answer the why with real conviction. Don't hide the pivot. Frame it as a logical next step.
And in interviews, use the STAR method.
Always. Situation, task, action, result. Give concrete examples of how your transferable skills solved a real problem in the past. Show, don't just tell.
Okay, but before you go all in, you have to test the waters with low risk, market validation.
Precisely. You can start with the volunteer work, maybe some pro bono consulting for a nonprofit, or take on a weekend side project like photography or coding, just to build portfolio.
I really like the idea of entrepreneurship, using your current job as a kind of risk-free lab.
It's so often overlooked. You can propose a temporary rotation or suggest a side project. If you're an accountant who wants to get into data science, volunteer to lead a financial digitization project.
You get the new skill on your resume, and you're still drawing a salary.
Right. And another powerful tool is launching a blog or a podcast on your new area of interest. It's a cheap, fast way to build a recognized identity and establish credibility. Finally, let's talk about getting professional support because it really ties all of this together. Our source pointed specifically to the evidence behind something called Cognitive Behavioral Career Coaching, or CBCC.
We hear about coaching a lot, but CBCC is very specific. What's the evidence that it actually works, especially for people dealing with the anxiety and depression that can come before a crisis?
There was a really interesting study on Nigerian public employees. They were struggling with severe anxiety and depression from chronic overwork and conflicting demands.
A very high-stress group. What were the results?
The findings were definitive. The group that received CBCC showed significantly reduced levels of anxiety and depression compared to the control group. And crucially, those positive effects were maintained long-term.
So it wasn't just a temporary boost, it created lasting resilience. How does it work? What's the mechanism?
CBCC is very structured. It combines cognitive and behavioral techniques to help you systematically identify and then challenge your negative or irrational thought patterns.
The faulty thinking that tells a successful person they're a failure?
Yes. It helps you replace those thoughts with more adaptive beliefs. Then it focuses on setting realistic, measurable goals that actually align with your core values while also developing practical coping strategies like relaxation techniques or better communication skills.
So, in essence, it helps you build the self-awareness and self-efficacy you need to make sure all those strategic changes, the financial planning, the skill mapping, are actually aimed at the right target for you.
It brings it all full circle. It ensures that the work you're doing, whether you change careers or just change your approach, is contributing to lasting satisfaction.
Okay, so let's just unpack all that. We've covered the shocking fact that the career crisis is hitting much earlier. We gave you a tool to tell if you're just exhausted, burnt out, or in a true change-driven crisis. We gave you the philosophical toolkit for managing regret by valuing the process, not just the project. We laid out the absolute need for detailed financial planning.
And then the tactical steps, leveraging your skills and using those low-risk tests like entrepreneurship.
The core message really seems to be about preparation. Strategic prep, deep self-knowledge, and a solid network are your allies here.
Whether you end up quitting or just coping by changing your perspective, the goal is clarity, total alignment with your deepest values.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If your dissatisfaction doesn't come from regret or the tyranny of projects, but from a fundamental mismatch in your talents or interests, what tiny entrepreneurship project could you start tomorrow inside your current company or just in your personal time to start testing the waters